Week 6, XFL DFS is upon us. We got a special guest, Scott Dradamas. Ellie's joining us, of course. Let's just jump right into this. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. We had an interesting week last week. Let's just get right into it.
It's time!
What is up, guys? Welcome to the Edge DFS. My name is Tyson Smith, joined by Ellie Hernandez as usual. Special guest, Scott. Hey, Scott, how are you, man? Thanks for joining us.
Good. Thanks for having me.
I wanted to get you on the show because obviously you're in the Edge DFS Discord and been a huge help there. But every time I'm scrolling through, when we're playing and we're live on XFL, I'm looking through the leaderboards. I'm looking at who's in first place. You're usually up there at the top almost all the time. So you're doing something right. We've all profited pretty well this year so far. So what are your thoughts so far with XFL DFS this season on Draftkings? And what is your outlook going forward? I know the contests are getting a lot smaller, but I really do think that there's more opportunity for guys without a giant bankroll like us to really profit, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I mean, I think this year it's been interesting because it's totally different from the 2020 season. If you remember, COVID happened and basically we all didn't know what to do. We were doing XFL, LOL, WNBA and stuff. And during that run, if you remember, the Sharks really got into XFL. They didn't have anything else to make money on. And so this time around, we're kind of shark free at the moment, at least the way I see it. And it's kind of more, there's not a lot of data either. So, it's effort kind of gets you wins, in my opinion. The more effort you put in, the better you're going to do. It's not exactly a set it, forget it type situation. Now we're having kind of NBA style injury news, maybe seeing players, out, an hour before the game. So, and there's an edge to this because you got to think about it. They're spreading out these contests between a Thursday and Sunday sometimes. This week, Saturday, Sunday, and a Monday.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just, it's a lot more fun this year. And like I said, it's rewarding effort. As far as going forward, I kind of feel like, I think right now we're at a nice level with the contests. I think they're going to stick around this range. I know I've got a bunch of tickets already for the big championship. We'll see what that actually turns into. But, as of right now, I'm definitely having fun playing it. And I do feel like it's a small group of us that are playing. So I see you guys on the leaderboard all the time. So, you know what I mean? There's not a lot of us, but it's fun. It's definitely a good escape from NFL where I have to scroll 3,000 receivers. It's such a combined managed kind of system here.
And only 8 teams. I mean, that just makes it a lot easier to know these rosters from top to bottom. It's been pretty nice. Ellie, how did you do last week? Did you step on a couple landmines like the rest of us? Because there's just so many dudes last week that just absolutely either didn't play, pulled zeros. Jalen Tolliver it up. Ellison didn't start. I mean, obviously Hunley issues like that. I still profited somehow thanks to Abram Smith and my Abram Smith exposure. But I feel like if you could just now at this point, we're at the point where we probably just need to play it safe especially with the quarterbacks. Like, don't try to get too crazy with the quarterbacks if you're playing these smaller contests. If you want to throw in one of these, on the fringe quarterbacks in the bigger contests, maybe. But how did that go for you, man? That was pretty brutal. Every single game, there was some massive issue, I felt like.
Yeah, despite the landmines, I think to bring up some of what Scott was pointing out, over the past few weeks, I think ownership's just been so tightly concentrated that as long as you add some exposure to some of these other people, some exposure, you're going to do okay. And that pretty much saved my ass this week. Right. We talked about it on the show last week, saving spots for the Sunday night game, just in case something bullshit happened with the quarterback. And it happened. Would you look at that? Right. So those little things, those ownership edges, those give you a little bit of leverage here. And in this weekend's case, that's what made I actually ended up profiting because I had a shitload of exposure to some of these other guys that didn't end up playing. Right. I mean, I talked about Brett Hundley. He was my guy. Luis Perez ended up in the optimal lineup. I think I had 35-40% exposure to him, but I faded Ben DiNucci and I ended up having enough flexibility to double up my exposure to what was it, Abram Smith.
Yeah.
So like those little things are what mattered, and that saved me. So I ended up profiting. Long answer to your short ass question.
Well, let's look at the winning lineups from last week. Gem Sports
Jesus,
here. Paxton Lynch with three fantasy points, shipped at 20K solo. You got Abram Smith, Jeff Badette, Cody Latimer, Jamaine Martin, and Rod Smith, interestingly enough. So 3 running backs, and then the defender's defense. This is all basically from one game, pretty much, minus the DC guys here. What jumps out to here? I mean, this is what we were talking about. Like, if you get screwed with your quarterback, it didn't really matter last week. I want to try to avoid that again this week because there's a lot of money I left on the table just because I played Hundley. But what jumps out to you here, Scott, with this lineup?
I think it's 3 things. One is the ownership situation. I think Lynch in general was going unowned pretty much the whole season, but we all knew he was on a roll. He did have a couple of good games coming into this, so Lynch makes sense. Abraham Smith makes sense. He's the number 1 pick, and I think it's kind of a situation if you just kept playing him, eventually he was going to hit. Badgett Badette and Latimer to me are the 2 safe, kind of consistent guys.
Yes.
And where this lineup shined is playing Martin, who's done nothing all season, came in overhyped, done nothing all season, and Rod Smith. So I think if you looked at the data and saw that Vegas in general, and in my opinion, on paper, Orlando probably, on the surface, Orlando looks like the worst defense, but fantasy-wise, Vegas is by far the worst defense.
Yep, exactly.
So I think playing the 2 running backs in that game was smart, but I mean, it's the Rod Smith. He's been unowned all year. I think 4% is his average ownership week to week, a little less than that. So for me, it was the Rod Smith call, and you can see it, the Martin call, and just the fact that Vegas, a lot of people don't think, everybody just thinks stack against Orlando. My thing is stack against Vegas.
And playing Jamaine Martin over Dimebag Darrell at 3K ended up working out. I still profited with our boy Darrington. It seemed like he fit the builds I wanted to build last week. But I mean, look, this is a pretty interesting lineup. He maxed this, right? He had 119 entries. Yeah, it looks like he did. So you would have never.
Yeah, 119 actually means 119 is his winning lineup. I think he maxed it with 150. 119 stresses that was his 119th
Yeah, that was
lineup.
Got it.
Won it.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I would have, if I was entering a bullet into this, no chance you'd have ever built this by hand. Just no chance. That's why I want to talk about this is the benefits. Instead of, if you don't have enough money to just throw a bullet into this big contest, let's look at this 222. I do feel like it's a little bit more forgiving. Can you see that? Yeah, Brahmas. It's a little bit more forgiving, and you still have decent upside at 10K and not a whole lot of entries. Would you rather, instead of putting like 50 lineups into the 15, just put in 1 or 2 into this 222? What do you think?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, Ellie, what do you?
I absolutely would. I mean, it's definitely a situation where I think if you look at the ownership difference in the 2, I mean, we play the 222. There's some serious leverage there.
Yeah, there really is. And Ellie, I think you'd probably tend to agree with that statement, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you start playing these higher dollar single entry contests, you can start relying on the ownership projections a little bit more. The field tends to play a little bit safer, right? So that you have a little bit more room for variance there at the top. I tend to play stick to the 20 maxes though. Those generally pay 24 to 25% out, whereas most of the other contests are 23% cash rates or lower. Yeah, 150s hit probably between 17 to 18.
Yeah, I'm trying to avoid this big contest. In my opinion, I'll put 1 bullet in that I'll hand build just for fun. That's just a throwaway. I'm going to lose that money most likely. But I'm focusing on the mini max and basically the 20 max, and then really putting all my time and effort into hand building for that 222, because I think that has the highest upside. And if you could afford to put 1 lineup into that, I would highly suggest doing that if you can. All right, let's look at our injuries first as we move on to week 6 here. I want to look at the injuries here.
Yeah, just pain. It was pain everywhere.
So, look, Martavis Bryant looks like he's probably going to play. I don't know. I'm probably not going to play him anyways. But there's a chance that you'll have to make that decision this week, unlike last week. Rod Smith, I don't know. I have him as a quarterback. I need to proofread my work here. He was just on rest, so he's probably going to play. A guy like Steven Mitchell with a quad injury, he had a big touchdown last week. Probably going to play. We don't know yet. A big one to talk about here, though, is Raquel Armstead for DC with the calf injury. He's still questionable. He's limited this week. So let's stop here. If Raquel Armstead is in, how much does that affect a very expensive, high-owned Abram Smith? Is there opportunity to just kind of maybe ease back a little bit on Abram Smith, considering he's probably going to get, 50 to 60% of the snaps instead of like 90 plus, right? Right, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, I'm personally staying away from Abraham Smith this week just because recency bias is so huge in XFL, and I think Houston's a tough defense. And in my opinion, Armstead. I mean, I would agree if Armstead starts to slide back and take some carries, that's going to hurt him even more. But I'm personally staying away from Abraham Smith this week.
Yeah, it's probably smart because everybody and their brother's going to play him. Even though I've been on him all year, he finally gets that big opportunity. But now now I can't be on him because he's just going to be too high owned. Ellie, this Morgan Ellison news here, he's out as of now. By the way, we're recording this on Friday, about 1 p.m. Eastern. So there's going to be more news that comes out. But as of now, Morgan Ellison is confirmed to be out. So it looks like Bradwell is starting, and maybe a little bit of TJ Hammonds on third down. What are your thoughts here, Ellie, with Bradwell? Thank God Ellison's out, in my opinion, because I'm a sucker for Ellison, and I'm gonna play him if he's active. Like last week, dude was active, didn't get the start. We didn't even see him until the second half. He had a random couple opportunities in the red zone, but in this case, you got to go with a guy like Bradwell. I think he's 5,500, man, and going up against a pretty good matchup against Orlando, right?
Yeah, I'm with you here. I think the best thing that we have here is we don't have to worry about Morgan Ellison. We know for certain that he's out. I'll have some exposure to Bradwell, and I'll have a little bit of TJ Hammonds. I mean, he gets involved in the pass game. He'll get some targets. So I think he might be a little interesting option as well.
Yeah, if this is a shootout, you could see Hammonds in a little bit more if they're just tossing the ball around like they do pretty much every game. All right, so look, San Antonio has some issues here. You got Travis Johnson, Travis Toivonen, I think that's how you say his name. Those guys are questionable. Newcomer Calvin Turner. Scott, I want to get your thoughts on this guy. He's listed as a running back on DraftKings, if I'm correct about that. But he's a they could assign him as a wide receiver, and I think he's around 5K. What is your interest in him? And then what are your thoughts on Balaj? Does Balaj really? Are you interested in him at all? Even if he does start, it's just not a good matchup for him at this point.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Balaj pop up on the report with an Achilles thing the other day, and we were kind of like freaked out by that.
Yeah.
And if you look at last week, Patrick got more involved in the game. Patrick has actually been on the up, and Balaj is kind of plateaued.
Yes.
So this Calvin Turner wide receiver, kind of like the Nick Holly situation, or the Houston that Houston has going on with the running back wide receiver. I think with Turner at 5,500, he's a little bit expensive. He did pull some ownership week one. I see about a 1%. So people were on him at the beginning, but I think we were all guessing at that point. I tend to lean on the safe side of let's give the guy a shot first and see how he does. Mm-hmm. But I will tell you, this is a good play to get different because every single player this season that has not played a game, the field is waiting for them to play. So there's less than, I think on average, 2% ownership towards a new player coming in. So I'm going to tell you right now, this guy's going to get extremely low ownership. So he would be a good GPP play for sure, especially the large field stuff.
Got it.
What do you think, Ellie?
Yeah, Ellie, I mean, I'm interested in playing a little bit of him in GPP. If the mini max, I'll probably throw like 5% of him in there just because San Antonio, who knows what they're doing at this point. You could see the guy just get absolutely like 6-7 targets fresh off the streets. Are you interested in a guy like Calvin Turner? Because there's some hype around him, and I'm kind of interested in a guy like that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And again, kind of just talking about contest selection. This is why I just love running some of those cheaper 20 max, especially for a sport like XFL, where we're still kind of learning where some of that variance is. Run a fucking 20 max at 10 cents that costs you $2 and really play with some bullshit lineups that you may not feel comfortable running in a $1 or the $15 or whatever. Right. And this is, this is what I'll do. This is what I've been doing all season. I'm going to have 5 to 10% pretty much of all these guys sprinkled in because they are going to get some run.
So Kirkland is out for the season. That's unfortunate. This guy was on pace to be one of the best wide receivers in the league, and probably going to be on an NFL team this summer. I don't know where that's going to be at this point. So with Kirkland out, Scott, we're automatically just on paper saying, oh, Burnett, that's the guy we want to go heavy on. But I don't think it's that straightforward. You got guys like Cedric Byrd. You got the Smith guy, right? So what are your thoughts on replacement ownership and replacement players in stacks with Houston?
Yeah, so Houston's deep at receiver, and they spread the ball. Silvers will spread the ball. I mean, I think week one we all thought Burnett was the guy, then Kirkland emerged, and
yep.
Kirkland was awesome, but Travell Harris, Justin Smith, Cedric Byrd, even Ben Putman have all gotten in the game, and Holly as well. So I think for me, it's going to be watching the game closely on Monday to kind of figure it out. I think Justin Smith is the hype right now. He was the hype early on in the season.
Yeah,
I think he's going to be pretty high owned at 4,100. I'm definitely going to play him just because I'm scared not to.
Yeah.
But guys like Cedric Byrd, Travell Harris, and like I said, even guys like Putman and stuff. And there's going to be some random stuff. They signed a new guy as well, so we're going to have to look out for it. But I think it's a tough matchup, anyways. I think this game is going to be a tough game.
Yes.
So it's going to be hard to figure out. But I definitely like Justin Smith and Harris as a pivot away from Burnett. I don't think you need to spend as much money on Burnett as he is.
All right, let's get into this first look on the matchups that we're looking at here. If you guys want a copy of this, just for quick reference while you're building, I update this throughout the weekend, so you can just jump in the Discord, right-click and download it. And if you want to join that Discord, by the way, it's in the description below. It's free. So the first game here we're seeing, we look like we got a Saturday afternoon game, and then we got a Saturday night game, then Sunday, and then a Monday night game. So this first game is Seattle Sea Dragons going into Orlando. The Sea Dragons are favored by 9.5 points, minus 390 on the money line. This is a 42.5 point total. I think it's been hovering around 42 to 43 and kind of moving around over the past few days. But this feels like a very, very interesting game. Any Orlando game, in my opinion, is just something you gotta really target. And I think most of the ownership is going to come to DiNucci and Pearson, and obviously guys on Seattle that are probably going to get you there. But what are your thoughts overall on this matchup, Ellie? I think that Seattle Sea Dragons, their defense, we saw it last week against Houston. Their defense is pretty good. And just because Orlando has been slinging the ball around, I don't know that I'm super, super interested in a ton of Orlando stacks, but you just got to consider it because they're going to be losing and they're going to be throwing the ball around. So how are you approaching this game? Because as usual, the Sea Dragons being the first game of the week, you might be dead in the water if you go heavy on the Sea Dragons right off the bat, right?
Yeah. So look, I think I'm going to stick with my normal strategy of just limiting my exposure to Ben DiNucci. Too expensive, too chalky. Just not really getting there in the stack pieces. But I really don't give a shit what kind of defense they have. Quentin Dormandy, D-Day invasion. I don't know. We're going to call him D-Day because they got two Quintins here. We're going to call the other one San Quentin. San Quentin Flowers. They're both quarterbacks, so we got to do something creative to come up with this shit, guys. But listen, 6K, man, he's starting a quarterback, and you can stack him with whoever the hell you want and run back with literally as many pieces as you want from the Sea Dragons. So that's really what I'm going to be targeting here. 21,000 for really the top stack there. You can put anybody else you want. So it's D-Day invasion, and yeah, they're going to invade Italy next, I guess, right? With Ben DiNucci. All right, moving on.
Look, Latimer is like probably one of the safest plays, and Pearson. The biggest thing with Pearson is he's just not scoring touchdowns. He's still most targets, most receptions. He's still going to be a guy that probably every single time you play him between 13 to 17 fantasy points, you can probably bet on something around there. That's why I think playing him in this 222 or any single entry is probably the way to go. But because of his price, it just makes you have to punt in other areas, most likely, if you're pairing him with DiNucci. So, Scott, thoughts on this game briefly, and then we'll move on over to this Vipers Battlehawks game.
Yeah, I definitely like this game. I think this game has shootout potential. I also think it could be low scoring, so it's kind of weird. But in general, I like the lower end receivers for Seattle. I think take your shots at the Juwan Greens, the Damian Willises, and the VCs, and guys like TJ Hammonds. I think take your chances on the cheap Seattle guys. It's going to be hard to spend. I mean, Pearson and DiNucci combined is like half your salary. So
Yep.
I like those guys, and like you said, Latimer's consistent. He's $7K now, though. He's more expensive, but he's consistent. And Rambo's on the ups.
Yeah.
Well,
Rambo's finally getting involved the way we thought he was going to be involved week one. It took him half the season, but hey, finally, with enough quarterbacks, they're going to finally find your best pass catchers out there. Briefly, I wanted to comment on this Josh Gordon news. Like, what have you guys been hearing? Is Josh Gordon like at odds? There's been multiple reports here. Willis is a guy that looks very interesting, and nobody's going to play him because you have these other guys like Smith for Houston. You have these other dudes that are popping up as better value almost. But I'm kind of interested in getting some Willis because we just don't know what Gordon's going to do this week. Are you scared of Gordon? Because I always am every week. He's just too expensive. But are you leaving him on your player pool at all, Ellie, this week?
Yeah, I'll have exposure to Josh Gordon, man. The one thing is like you're just guessing either way. Like even if we do have news on a player, and we were talking about it earlier, back in 2020 season, they had a guy in IR who played that fucking game. Like it just doesn't matter. So you just got to ignore the news and kind of, unless somebody got like shot in the leg, like Plaxico burst or something, like they're probably playing if they're ready to go. So I don't know, man. I think Josh Gordon's fine.
Sorry, we're spending a lot of time in this game, but this is an important game. We're not going to spend any time on the Brahmas really much. But what are your thoughts, Scott, on this whole DiNucci drama with Gordon? Is there anything to that?
I mean, I first I thought it was just a mistake on the injury report, but there could be something to it. He only had 40% of the snaps last week. We all heard it. DiNucci just call him out on live TV. That was pretty hardcore. But Willis and VC play pretty much exclusively on the outside. So if you want to pivot off Gordon, or if you're a little bit worried about Gordon, I think VC and Willis are the two guys. Juwan Green plays a little in the slot and a little on the outside, so he's another option.
All right, so the Battlehawks leaving St. Louis, they've had some great attendance there. It's been a great environment to watch football in that stadium. They're headed to the, women's softball field in Vegas with, 27 people and their kids hanging out watching this game. So the environment isn't going to be, as exciting, obviously, but you have two good offenses here. You have the Vegas Vipers with, on paper, the worst defense fantasy-wise in the league, so you were always going to want to target teams that are going against the Vipers and Orlando, obviously. But this game is kind of interesting because this has the highest total on the slate. It's a 44.5 point. That feels like to me that one of the highest totals we've seen this year. But St. Louis is only favored by 3 points, minus 155 on the money line. So what are your thoughts here, Scott, on this matchup? It feels like Perez is the guy now. They changed their offensive coordinator. We all thought Hundley was going to play last week because he was healthy, supposedly. I've been bit too many times by him to ever play Hundley again, unless Luis Perez is like on his deathbed. Maybe I'll play him. But Perez seems to be the guy. Are you interested in Perez, or is there a risk that he could get pulled if he throws a pick in this game?
I'll have a little, but I think there's a risk. At the end of last game, Rod Woodson definitely talked up Perez. I think just in general, people are pulling for Perez. I think the Hundley paycheck, is really causing some issues there as far as us thinking they're going to for sure play Hundley. But I think he's on a short leash. But I don't know. I'll have a little of Perez, but he's still risky.
Yeah. And Ellie, Badet is up there. He's probably the best player in the slate every week, but he's not. His ownership isn't always matching that because you're getting guys like Pearson and some of these other dudes who are taken away from that. He's expensive. Badet is expensive, but I always want to play Badet. Is there any matchup issues here that you're looking at? Is there anything that worries you why you wouldn't want to play him? Or is he just a week in, week out guy you want to target, Ellie?
Yeah, man, I love Badet. He is one of those guys that I'm going to target on a weekly basis. And with Josh Gordon being kind of up in the air, right? Like he's going to be one of our primary pay up pieces, and I think there's value on this slate to get to him. But as far as this game goes, I think I'm going to be prioritizing AJ McCarron stacks, right? And that probably might be one of my favorite stacks just on the slate, and that's not going out on a limb at all. But and then running it back with Badet or Sidney Sweeney, those are probably my two.
Yeah, and Scott, you were interested in a little bit of Geronimo Allison. He's trending up a bit, in your opinion, right? I mean, it on paper, it seems like he's actually getting a little bit more involved. He had a random DNP. I don't even think he was injured. He just didn't. They just deactivated him for that game. Now with Martavis Bryant kind of having some issues, staying healthy, is it, in your opinion, this week, are you going Sweeting or you're gonna pay up a little bit more for Allison, because Allison's going to be 1% owned in every contest?
Yeah, his ownership's been pretty low all year, aside from week one. I would definitely say that Allison's on the upswing. I like Allison. If Bryant is back, it hinders him a little bit. They play a 2 tight end set. They play 4 tight ends in total, about 25 to 30% of the snaps each. So it is hard to get to him, and the majority of the target share goes to Badet. So I mean, Badet's probably one of the most consistent guys out there. But yeah, I like Allison. If I had to choose between Allison and Sweeting, I'm going to go with Allison this week.
All right, let's move on to this Brahmas versus Renegades rematch from last week. This reminds me of like a Thursday night game, like a Thursday night Broncos game earlier this season. These games are not entertaining at all. They're hard to watch. Both of these teams, at least when it comes to the Vipers and the Guardians, they're bad teams, but they light it up and they have fun. The Brahmas and Renegades are more of a defensive-oriented team. This is a 33 total. The Renegades are -3 favorites at home this week. Last week, Brahmas were -3 favorites. I'm not comfortable with any of these quarterbacks. I'm not playing any of these quarterbacks. I know that San Antonio went out and got a quarterback, Ben Kurt, I believe. He's not going to play this week probably, but I'm not playing any of these quarterbacks just because there's a chance that they're going to be rotating out 2 or 3 guys, each of these teams, and just trying dudes out. Like Anderson, I think is one of the dudes' names. Maybe he gets play over Plitt. Who knows? Any interest here, Scott? Just very briefly, you're probably not doing stacks. I mean, maybe if you want to get crazy with it, but we're probably looking for one-offs and defensive minded elements to this game, right? Who are your favorite one-offs here? Landon Akers is back. He's expensive. Are you interested in him?
No, I'm not. I'm going to be like the field. I'm going to fade this game minus the defenses. I like Vasher at his price. Staying away from the quarterbacks. I like Devion Smith because Farrow's out now. So that's pretty much it for me.
Ellie, Canella is always interesting. He has a higher floor. He's going to be involved, but if this team's scoring 15 real life points, he's probably not going to get you there because he's in the 75 plus 100 range. There's better value out there. Are you interested in Canella? Who's your go-to guy here if you're looking for one-offs at all from this game? I'm probably not going to look for any one-offs really here. Maybe Canella and then just both defenses, right?
Yeah, I think defense is kind of what you target here. I don't mind getting to, just having a little bit of exposure to Landon Akers, probably more TJ Vasher. And that's just because I like him from like 2 weeks ago. That might be a recency bias on my plate, wanting to get to him. But other than that, I don't mind Canella. And then, Brandon Arconado or,
Bonds, maybe
Landon or Arenado.
Nolan Arenado.
He's not terrible. He's going to get a little bit of Nolan Arenado from Colorado. Anyways, he's gonna get some run. He's gonna get a couple receptions, so I don't mind getting him. I'm not targeting this game at all, though. I like the other games.
All right, screw this game. Let's move
Literally
on.
all the other games.
Let's move on. This is going to be a good matchup. I think that Houston going into DC, we could see some rain. I don't know. I'm guessing at this point. It's Monday night. We're recording on Friday. Keep an eye on that. We've seen how that affects the game with DC. Reichwell Armstead could be back. We'll see. When it comes to stacking, Teamu with Abram Smith and Lucky Jackson or something. I feel like you got to get kind of weird with these stacks. Even King. You should put King in there naked. or put king in the defense. Just weird stuff can happen with these DC defender games. So if you're doing, bigger tournaments, you probably want to get weird with the stacks because they're just not throwing the ball like we would expect them to, and you're probably not going to be able to link up the right piece if you're stacking, two wide receivers. Brandon Silvers is usually the guy that I start with based on his price when it comes to cash. I don't know that I'm going to do that this week. This is a tough matchup here. So, Scott, what are your thoughts on this? This is a 42 total, minus 145 on the money line for DC, and they're 2.5-point favorites. How do we approach this for a Monday night game? I don't see this being a high-scoring game. Do you?
I don't, and it's weird. In lineup builds I've done already, I'm trying to force some players in. This is a true late night hammer as far as Monday night goes. A lot of eyes going to be on this game, but it's a tough call. I like a lot of random guys like Lucky Jackson, and I like guys who just are getting the high snap counts. Like I said, we said Justin Smith, but Silvers this week. I've been playing Silvers heavy this whole season. This will be the first week I'm going to be really light on Silvers. And I'm worried about the weather a little bit. But defense, these defenses could sneak up. These could be two of the highest scoring defenses this week. I think it's a sneaky play.
And Ellie, you and I brought this up on the show last week against Houston, that we felt like Houston was a good, solid team. Don't get me wrong, but they hadn't been challenged up to that point at all. And Seattle, they kind of exposed them a bit. This is going to be another tough matchup for the Roughnecks going up against the defenders. We know they like to pound the ball, and we know that they can throw the ball if they need to. What are your thoughts here, man? I don't know if I'm going to get to a ton of stacks from Houston in this game, especially considering how expensive everybody is. But thankfully, we do have that injury news. We can kind of find some of these cheaper dudes like Bird or Smith to fit into your stacks. How are you handling this last game here?
I'm going to do the same thing that I did last week. I'm going to be saving 20 to 25% exposure for this game specifically, if not for any other reason, so that I can late swap throughout any news that I need to throughout the weekend. And this is different. This isn't two shitty teams playing on a Sunday night, right? This is two of the best teams in the league and one of the more consistent offense, right? Like I know we saw Houston play DC recently, and it wasn't necessarily the greatest offensive game, but this is one of the better teams. So I don't think you're taking too big of a risk by reserving some exposure to this game specifically, especially considering it's probably not going to be the chalkiest game.
All right, let's get into our breakdown here. We're just going to go position by position very quickly so you guys are aware of all the salaries. We'll get into some of our favorite stacks. Then we'll build lineups together as we round this up. We're at 32 minutes. I promise we're going to try to keep this under an hour. Let's get into our breakdown. Break it down. All right, so our boy Ben DiNucci. 11.5K. Clearly, week in, week out, probably the guy that is going to get the most ownership, being on a team that throws the ball a million times a game. Obviously, I'm starting out by trying to get him into, my single entry type cash builds, but I'm probably going to end up with a little bit more of AJ McCarron. He's at 10.9K. That $600 is going to matter. Brandon Silver's at 10.7. These are the top tier dudes. So Scott, talk to me. I'm going to pull up this graphic that you created. It's very helpful. I think at this point in the year, we need to focus on dudes that we know are going to play the whole game at this point, and the safe bets, and then get weird with it. In the 10 cent or the 25 cent 20 max, you can play some of these other dudes like D-Day. But for the bigger dollar stuff, we probably want to stick to these top three guys. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, DiNucci is going to be contrarian just based on his price. He's still going to be high owned. He's just popular. People just love to plug and play the first QB, it seems like, in XFL DFS. But, DiNucci, AJ are two guys I really like. I think they both have the best matchups on the slate. And, Silvers is a little expensive, though. I mean, if you look at that, he's only $200 cheaper than AJ. That's a big price increase for the week he had last week.
Especially the matchup, considering that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think safe is where we're starting to lean now. At least in single entry or cash builds, I think safe is the way to go. It's consistency. Look, they both basically AJ and Ben have had 100% of the snaps pretty much the whole season. And you can't really say that about any other quarterbacks. Even Silver shares time.
Yeah.
So, I think they're safe.
So this tier 2 here that you've laid out, Luis Perez is very tempting to me because we know he's going to sling the ball around. At this point, it's kind of obvious that this is going to be, he's probably going to play the whole game, but we just don't know. It's the risk. If we knew he was going to play the whole game, I would be on Perez quite a bit. We just don't know. And he's at 8,600, man. That's an interesting price. You got Jordan Teamo, 8,700. D-Day, Quentin Dormandy, Stone Min, 6K for a quarterback. That's why, like, when I'm just building on my phone, hand building at night, messing around, I kind of land on Dormandy quite a bit because it just makes everything so much easier. But I don't know that he plays the whole game. Maybe you see some Quentin Flowers. Maybe, Dormandy needs to go use the bathroom and you see Paxton Lynch for 2 drives. It's just so random. Ellie, what are your thoughts on this Dormandy dude? And are you confident enough that at that price, he can get you at least 12, 15 fantasy points, and maybe you don't need him to play every single drive? I don't know, man. I'm kind of on the fence. What do you think?
Yeah, man. Look, at 6K, I don't think he's going to be more than 5 to 10% owned. Like, you can probably be even with the field, and you can do whatever you want with this pricing, so that you don't need to be too weird to get different somewhere else, right? So you could probably try and come up with the chalkiest build you can, and then just make whatever adjustment that you feel is reasonable off that, right? Make a pivot off that lineup. And then I think the same thing can be said for his buddy San Quentin. Right, Quentin Flowers. Like, they're both 6K. We know that Dormandy D-Day is going to be the guy starting, so you take that with a grain of salt. Maybe you have double exposure, but maybe run a couple lineups with San Quentin as well. Right, maybe he gets a couple goal line touchdowns like De'Aaron King did a couple weeks ago. So those are the things that I think we need to keep in mind. And at 6K, man, like, stack up with the receiver. Like, don't run him naked this time. We don't need naked we don't need naked prisoners. Like, sorry, San Quentin. I got to explain that a little bit, because what is that? The Rock too? Is that? It kind of works out.
I don't know where you're going with this. It's dangerous, but I don't know where you're going.
No. Welcome to The Rock, bro. It's like it's honoring like Sean Connery and Nicolas Cage as well as The Rock.
That's not San Quentin. That's not San Quentin. Okay. We'll be very careful here from now on out. But yes, Quentin Flowers is very interesting in my opinion, because we talked about it last week. They're going to bring him in for red zone opportunities, and they did. They definitely did. They're going to bring him in for the 2-point conversions. If you get 2-point conversions out of Flowers and he throws a passing touchdown at that price tag, that's very interesting in tournaments. Let's get on to our running backs here. Look, there's not a whole lot to talk about when it comes to running backs. There's a handful of guys that we're really interested in, and there's some value. So Max Borghi, he got there kind of last week again. I think, what did he get? You 13 fantasy points, but he's 9,100. I just don't see myself getting a ton of him, especially going up against DC. Abram Smith at 9,400. He's going to be way overowned. He's going to be the guy that he's going to be the Brian Hill of last week, probably. Everybody's going to say, oh, this is the guy. Let's plug him in. Brian Hill, 8,900. You got Devion Smith at 7,800. And then Morgan Ellison's out, so let me get him off this list. And then, look, one guy I really want to talk about here. Where are you, bro? I should sort by salary. That would probably be the smart thing to do. Darius Bradwell for Seattle. We know he was signed a few weeks ago. He's going to get majority of the snaps, and going up against Orlando, man, there's a chance that they're going to need to run this clock out in this game, being up by 2 or 3 touchdowns. And Bradwell's the guy that's going to get the ball in the red zone, most likely, if they're within that 5-yard line. 5,500, man, I'm really landing on him a lot in basically any kind of build I have, just because of his price. And I think he's got a decent floor, Scott. What are your thoughts on Bradwell? And then what are your thoughts about some of these other high price guys? Are you going to get to them?
I love Bradwell. I think at 5,500, with the fact that Seattle's probably going to put the beat down on Orlando, I like Bradwell a lot. The higher price guys, Brian Hill, he's got a really good matchup, so I do like him. He's a little expensive for me. Like I said with Abraham Smith, I love him. The guy's awesome, but I just know the trends are there. Everybody's going to click his name. It's just the way it is. So I'm going to try to avoid him. But, there's other 2 guys I like. The guys I really like are the Las Vegas backs, both of them, Rod Smith and John Lovett. I think they're they love it even more than Rod Smith. That's my main guy I like this week. I know it's kind of an odd take, but I do like Lovett
playing from
this
behind.
week.
We've seen him get some high upside catches and take one of them to the house. And if Vegas is really playing from behind in this game, which we probably think they will be, Lovett is interesting at 5,200. Dimebag Darrell at 5,100. I don't think he's necessary to play this week. I mean, last week he was 3K. I just don't see him getting enough snaps over Jermaine Martin to make it worth it. And the price difference isn't that much. Anybody else here that we want to talk about before we move on to wide receivers? Because wide receivers is really where we're going to make our money most likely this week. Anybody else you want to point out, Ellie?
Well, hold on, Scott. Were you talking about? Can you scroll back down to 5,500? Was it Calvin Turner? You said that's listed as a running back, but gets wide receiver. So we need to talk about that real quick, right? If we're struggling, like he may be like a decent pivot off of Darius Bradwell if we realize that Darius Bradwell's coming in 20-25% ownership. If Calvin Turner is going to be play running back, we're going to be listed at running back as a wide receiver 1 or 2. Or even a 3, like we have to consider him at that price. So don't sleep on him. Let's kind of see where he ends up on this, in the roster.
And if Raquel Armstead comes back, I don't think I'm really super interested in playing him, with that matchup at 4,600. But maybe he'll fit into a lineup or two for me just because he's going to be 0% owned. Nobody's going to play him really. All right, let's go to wide receivers here. So Pearson at 11.3K. Clearly, he's the go-to guy when it comes to, we know he's going to get volume. He just hasn't gotten to the end zone. Minus that one long touchdown he had a few weeks ago, he really hasn't touched the end zone. He's just getting a ton of targets and a ton of opportunities. But he's 11.3K. Josh Gordon at 10.5. I'm his ownership's going to be under 3% or under 5% this week. I really do feel like it. Badette at 10.2K. Those are the top tier dudes, along with Butler at 9,800. Deontay Burnett at 9,700, which his ownership, I believe, will increase just simply because any casual people that see Kirkland out are going to automatically think that Burnett is going to soak up all that, all that opportunity. I don't think it's necessarily that easy. So what are your thoughts on these higher end top tier wide receivers, Scott? You got to try to get to Ja'Cory Pearson, right? Mainly out of fear, right?
Yeah, I mean, with this Gordon stuff, I think Pearson is a good play. I mean, his price is so high up there, but I do think the fear factor is accurate. I think the guys like Pearson, my favorite guy Butler, and your favorite guy Badette. I think those 3 plays. I think you really have to have one of those guys in every lineup just because they're so consistent.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Ellie, who's your favorite top end dude here? Hakeem Butler going up against Vegas. That's nice, man. But he is expensive. And if we're sticking with one of these higher end quarterbacks, are you going one off with Hakeem Butler, or is he probably just going to land in a lot of your AJ McCarron stacks?
He's going to land. I mean, both. He's going to get in a lot of my stacks. He's going to be a lot of my one-offs. I'm going to be careful not to miss out on Darius Shepard either in my one-offs, and as well as my stacks. But honestly, I think I'm going to have a little bit of exposure to Pearson. But I think you can kind of look more from Butler and down to even Rambo. Like I think that's kind of where my core is going to kind of sit. Just when it comes to building with wide receivers, I think that price range is nice, and they have similar floors really to kind of Pearson and some of those other guys.
Yeah, and to me, Shepard at 8,200 is a guy that's going to slip in between the cracks again, just because you're probably not getting AJ McCarron and Hakeem Butler and Shepard in a stack together. So maybe if you go AJ McCarron with a Shepard stack and run it back with Badette, maybe that's the way you're able to kind of at least afford that stack, because that's kind of expensive. Anybody else here we want to talk about? We got Sidney Sweeney. The guy I really want to talk about is Cedric Byrd. This dude's like top 5 in receptions in the entire league. And I know he probably hasn't put up the points that we want to see from him, but with Kirkland out, everybody automatically is going to jump to Smith. And I think Byrd is right there. I really do like Byrd. I was talking about him last week. I believe he scored a touchdown last week. What are your thoughts on Cedric Byrd, Scott? Any interest in him? How good of a pivot is it worth pivoting off of Justin Smith to go to Cedric Byrd?
Definitely, just because I think Smith's going to pull the ownership. I mean, Cedric Bird last week had 47% of the snaps and 19% target share, 9 targets. That's pretty good, but it only turned into 20 yards. So
Yeah.
for me, I'm definitely liking Cedric Bird as a pivot to Smith, but Smith has what I consider big game potential. I think Smith has a chance to put up numbers similar to what Burnett did week 1. So for me, I'm still probably going to go with Smith, but I like I said, I like all the Houston receivers. Silver spreads the love, so I like them all.
Ellie, any random dude on here that we want to be looking into? We didn't really mention Damian Willis much. If he's really getting the priority over Gordon, or if he's getting 60% of the snaps over Gordon, it could be very interesting to get a guy like that at that price at 3,700. Lance Lenore's at 3,700 again. TJ Vasher's at 3,400. Man, there's a lot of dudes on this under 4K range that we're gonna need to find these dudes to fit them in with these expensive stacks. Who's your favorite dude in this range?
Well, so here's another one. Fred Brown, he's 3,200. He has the same amount of targets on the season as Brandon Arconato and Sidney Sweeney. He has 2 less than guys like Austin Prohl and Josh Hammond, Cedric Bird that we just talked about, right?
Yeah.
So I another guy that we talked about a little bit last week. I had a little bit of exposure to, but I like Fred Brown. Again, Eli Rogers, what is he? 3,600 this week, seeing a decent amount of targets. Lance Lenoir. I can't say his name, man. Lance Noir. He still hasn't been priced up. He's 3,700. Like I just think there's a lot of wide receivers in that range that I'm comfortable playing.
Scott, who's your dude in this range that you're most interested in, and how much interest do you have in this like 3 to 4K range or around there?
The 3 to 4K range for me, it's going to be probably Vasher up there solely because of the situation in San Antonio right now. We don't even know who they're going to throw out there.
Yeah.
That's why that Turner Jr. call was a good one. But I like guys like the Seattle low end guys and the Houston low end guys, like just VC, Juwan Green, Damian Willis for Seattle. I like playing them a lot, and the Justin Smiths, and there's going to be some sneaky guys too. Javonte Payton's been on the come up for Arlington. There's some sneaky 3K guys. Jazz Ferguson might actually see some snaps for DC. He's 3K flat. But I mean, I think there's some good plays for sure. I just don't think there's a whole lot of them.
Yeah.
Stephen Mitchell too at 4,300. Stephen Mitchell is a great. He played 50% of the snaps last week. He's on the rise too. It's just hard with Shepard and Butler getting so much of the target share.
Yeah, absolutely. Stephen Mitchell, if he's active, it's definitely a guy we need to look at. All right, so tight ends, really not a lot to talk about here. Sal Cannella, Cody Latimer. In my opinion, that's kind of all I'm going. I just don't see opportunity, even in like bigger field tournaments, to get to these guys like Elise Mack and Ethan Wolf if he plays, and Dion Yelder. There's probably some other opportunity. There's probably other guys in there to talk about, but I'm really only focused on Sal Cannella and Latimer. And me, Latimer is like the safest play week in and week out when it comes to tight ends at 7K. Thoughts, Ellie? Cannella, Latimer, those are probably the guys we want to focus on. And how much Latimer are you getting to now that his price is going up and his popularity is going up?
I mean, Orlando sucks, so I just, I don't want to get too overexposed to a team that sucks just in general. So that is going to limit the amount of upside I have to Latimer. And then Cannella, I mean, Arlington's not necessarily that consistent either. So, like, they're starting to get at prices where they need to have touchdowns to pay off, or they need to have 7 to 10 receptions, 80 yards.
Yeah.
So if you need to play a tight end, like, again, like Alize Mack at 3,300, that's the guy that I'm looking at. And if you want to throw in some of these other random guys, you can.
Yeah, a guy like Mack is interesting. We haven't really seen a ton of volume there, but if there's going to be one of these random 3K type tight ends to target, it's probably going to be like a guy like that, because he's on the field a lot. And with all this, all the changes that have been happening with the wide receivers for San Antonio, Tolliver gets released, he gets re-signed. It's just a shit show. Elise Mack, to me, is kind of like one of the safer plays on the team, because we know he's going to be out there. We know he's going to be run blocking, and he might get an opportunity here and there. Any interest in Elise Mack, Scott?
Definitely. Yeah, I think San Antonio, their whole situation. I mean, we what was it, like week 2 or week 3 when Cone just went
Yeah.
nuts on his tight ends. I honestly think that for me, Mac's a great play, especially at that price.
Yeah, absolutely.
We just don't know what's going to happen with them, so I think he's a great play.
It's a risk. Like his floor is 0 and his ceiling is probably like 10 points,
Yeah.
probably, So if that 10 points at 3,300 allows you to get like a massive epic stack, then I think it's probably worth it. But don't just go throwing him in there because you're trying to save salary in like in a low owned stack that really you don't need him in. All right, let's go to defense. So look, every week it's kind of up in the air as to which one of these defenses is going to go off. Last week Brahmas were a popular choice. I didn't really play much Renegades defense just because of their price. Again, Renegades defense, the highest price on the slate. It's probably a good option now. Now that we've seen San Antonio, we know that they're not going to put up points. I think Renegades and Brahmas is probably the defenses to go after. And at $1,000 cheaper, the Brahmas, if they get you 6-7 fantasy points, maybe that's enough. Maybe that's enough if it allows you to get up to a dude that gets you 2 touchdowns as a wide receiver. But what are your thoughts here, Ellie? How are you handling this when it comes to like the cashy, like the 222 build or a single entry? Where would you go defensively here?
I mean, look, I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. Like, I do not give a shit about these defenses. I mean, even the Vegas Vipers had 2 points last week, and they were still in some of my best lineups. Like, I will build the best lineup that I possibly can, and then put in the defense. Now, if I end up with 100% Orlando Guardians, then I may revisit that opinion. But I think you just cap out maybe 20-25%, rotate these guys in based on whatever your build is. Just don't build an entire Vegas stack, right? And then have that defense playing against them. I know it sounds dumb as shit, but I'm just not spending much time on defense, man. I want to build the rest of the lineup.
Yeah, and look, if these quarterbacks, even the best, even AJ McCarron will turn the ball over, and we've seen DiNucci, he's a turnover machine. So just because the Sea Dragons come out and score 30 real life points, if the Guardians can get you 2 or 3 sacks in a scoop and score at 3,600, I'm not too scared to sprinkle them in. And I think that goes with every defense. With the Vipers, I'm probably not going to be playing Vipers defense. Who knows? But Scott, who are the defenses you're targeting for the bigger dollar entries? And then where are you going when it comes to your tournament lineups here?
I think I'm sticking with Renegades and Brahmas, and I agree. The Brahmas at $1,000 cheaper looks to be it. But if Cone's going to play, I really like the Renegades because there's just no line there. I mean, he's got like 2 seconds to throw the ball, but I think the sneaky plays are defenders and roughnecks. I do think that could turn into a defensive. I think we're going to see a couple defensive touchdowns in the defenders roughnecks game,
especially if that gets rainy down there. I like both of those defenses. It's going to get sloppy. We're going to see fumbles. We're going to see weird stuff like we saw in those 2 Defenders versus Vipers games. I mean, it's just the defense. There was points that were put up, but the defenses really matter in those sloppy games. All right, let's move on to our stacks / value. We've already gone through a lot of this. We've already kind of talked about our value here. Ellie, if you had to name one stack that you're entering this weekend into tournaments, it could be with a run back or not. Where are you leaning here? What are your thoughts here?
I mean, I'm not going to say my obvious choice that I guess I am, AJ McCarron stacks. But, dude, I got to go with Quentin Dormady, my D-Day Invasion stacks. That's where I'm going to be targeting and building the most. And I'm going to be running that back. I don't think you need Ja'Cour Pearson. I think you can kind of get Blake Jackson. You can get whatever you want from that game. It's going to be an explosive game. And, God damn, dude, the line is plus 9.5, right? So they're expected to be down 10 points plus the entire game. So, Normandy is going to be throwing that goddamn ball. That's all I got to say, man. I love that stack.
I feel like in my opinion, if D-Day can get like 70+% of the snaps, if he doesn't just get pulled out in the first quarter, which I don't think is going to happen, but who knows? I think that as long as they can score 2 or 3 touchdowns in some way, he might pay off at that price tag, because every week I want to focus on these stud wide receivers. I want to get the Bedetts. I want to get the Hakeem Butlers. And with the us having to pay up for running backs like dudes like Hill and Abram Smith and guys like that, to me, saving money at the quarterback might be the way to go, but it's very scary. It's very scary in my opinion. Scott, what are your thoughts, man? We're probably overthinking it. We're galaxy braining this shit again, of course. You probably just got to go with Danucci, McCarron, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the AJ, Brian Hill, Shepard, Butler, I think, like I said, I'm stacking against Vegas. Vegas is my Orlando. And then secondary would be Danucci and the cheaper Seattle receivers. Those are going to be the stacks I run the most of.
All right, let's get into our lineup build here. So we're going to build some lineups together. We're not going to build a ton, but let's build our sort of our like two entry, or like a single entry, like our optimal entry that we think is kind of the best that we can get, and don't even worry about ownership. By the way, guys, if you want to join that Discord, it's free. We're all in there hanging out. Last week we found out that Cone was not playing. We posted that in the Discord. We all got away from that disaster that was potentially could have happened. So for news, for all that stuff, you guys can chat with all of us about any of your questions. We're doing the research for you guys. We're all busy, so jump in there, ask questions, and check out some of the graphics that we're uploading in there as well. So Ellie, Scott, where are we thinking for this like sort of single entry cashy build here? You probably want to go AJ McCarron here, right?
AJ McCarron or Quentin Dormady.
Let's go McCarron, because people are just going to skip to this video and play 99% Dormady, and he's going to get a DMP, and people are going to unsubscribe. McCarron. So do we want to go with Butler here? Do we want to go with Brian Hill? How crazy do we want to get when it comes to with stacking for a lineup where we don't need to hit the nuts, most likely? Do we want to spread ourselves out? Do we want to do like a McCarron, Butler run back with Badette? Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think you can't go wrong with Butler or Shepard or Hill even. But I like Butler. Butler's my guy.
All right, so we pop Badette in there because I think that's the right thing to do. We're going to be missing out. We're not going to be able to get guys like Pearson. We're going to have to probably go down to VC or Blake Jackson even at the best if we want to target that Seattle game. But I think right now what we probably want to do is let's go to running back and get that sorted out. Does everybody agree that Bradwell at 5,500 going up against Orlando is the way to go here, right? Do you guys agree?
Yeah. All
right, Bradwell, and
we're building my lineup right now. This is exactly my cash lineup. That's awesome.
All right, so now I feel like let's try to target Orlando a little bit here, right? Like, do we like what's his bucket enough? Latimer to throw him into this cash lineup, or is there better value to be had? What are your thoughts on that, Scott?
It's tough. I mean, I think everybody knows Latimer's been like the most consistent player, at a decent price. It's $7K now. I do feel like he's iffy, but I like him, and I agree. I think D-Day is gonna. He looked really good, and I think he has a better chance of playing the whole game. I honestly do. So I do think that Latimer is safe. So when it comes to cash, he's safe.
Yeah, I agree. So that leaves us in a little bit of a predicament here. We're going to have to obviously sort of punt. But let's get our defense first. I think probably the Brahmas is the way to go for defense again. At 3,800, we save some money compared to the Renegades, but that gets us 2,800. So we're not really looking too good here. We might have to switch something out. Maybe we go down from Butler to Shepard, or what do we do here, Ellie? What is your thought here? Because I think we need to get up to at least around 4K in this last spot, in my opinion. And we could utilize that Justin Smith or Cedric Bird or something like that. So what do we do? How do we adjust this? Do we go down from Butler? Do we go off from Latimer? What do you?
Yes, I think we pull out Latimer and throw in Lance Noir, whatever the hell his name is. For LL Cool J.
Okay, for cash. All right, let's try it. We might as well. Lance Lennar, where are you, bro? What is he? 3,700.
Yeah.
Yep, 37. So that gets us 6,100. That could be fine. Where does that get us? Is it worth punting on a guy like Lance? I don't know that it is. Because now you're in the Sidney Sweeney range.
Still not giving us quite enough.
Yeah, I honestly.
I mean,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say Lance did get 90%, 97% of the snaps, 25% target share,
Wow.
8 targets last week.
Wow.
I mean, that's 8 targets, 25% of the target share. I mean, that's nice.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, safe, no, but it's looking better.
Yeah.
He's looking better. That's for sure.
What if we did this? Like, I don't want to not play Hakeem Butler, but in a matchup against Vegas, I could easily see one of these other dudes getting the same or higher score than Butler. And just building in 5 minutes here, my only recommendation would be to keep Latimer and just go down from Butler to like Shepard or Hill. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Am I on the right track?
I mean, technically, Badet has a tougher matchup than Butler.
Okay.
But Badet is that whole squad. Let's be real when it comes to the target share. So I mean, and Perez loves them. So yeah I mean, look, Shepard played 98% of the snaps. I think he had at least 24% target share last week as well. So I think Shepard's pretty damn safe as well.
Because this, and look, you guys got to, at home, you got to play with what you feel comfortable with. So don't just go blindly, entering these lineups. There's going to be news that comes out. There's going to be probably some more value to talk about as the weekend goes along. But to me, this feels like the safest starting point because at 4,400, we've got lots of options here. You can go Lenore if you wanted to. You can go Justin Smith. I mean, I think that Justin Smith with his ownership kind of propels him into this cash realm because I think a lot of sharp people are going to be plugging him in. Would that be the way you go, Scott and Ellie? What do you think?
Yeah, Justin Smith, that's fine. The only thing that I would say is just probably, I think sticking with Lance over Latimer is probably just the way to go for a cash build, just because Latimer has to pay off a lot to get to that 7K floor that we need for cash at the tight end spot. But other than that, man, like this is fine. This is definitely a fun
variations of this. Leave Butler in, pull Badet, go down from him. Who knows? But I think
run a 3 max. Right? 3 entry max.
Yeah.
Run 3 variations of this lineup.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's build a tournament lineup. So where do we want to go? Scott, I'm gonna rely on you to tell us where you want to go here for a tournament lineup. Something fun that we could build here and get a little bit, get upside with some low ownership if possible.
Yeah, I mean, D-Day's got to be your quarterback at the tournament for your tournament lineup, in my opinion. Yeah. I think 6K, you've built some lineups in the Discord. We all know that this is the fun lineup to build.
Yes, it is.
A 6K quarterback, and if you put in Bradwell in there at running back, this becomes like the easiest build ever. But I think we just use Bradwell in the cash build, right?
Yeah.
So maybe we go different running back here.
Yeah, maybe we pay up a little bit. Like maybe we get a Brian Hill or Abram Smith. Maybe Brian Hill probably the way to go. Right?
So look, for GPP, I think the 2 ways we go is instead of Abram Smith, I think you actually go down to Borgie. He's 25% less owned. Yeah. Like he's a quarter of the ownership, projected ownership, and he's only $300 less. Or who's that? I can't, dude. I'm going to keep asking you, Scott. What's that goddamn guy's name? He's listed as a running back, but is a wide receiver.
Turner Jr.
Turner Jr. Yeah, 5,500.
Hey, let's try Turner Jr. here. He's in that.
Yeah, that would be. I'm saying less than 2% owned. At this moment. Yeah. So more news comes out.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So now, who do we want to pair Dormady with? We probably want to pair him with at least one pass catcher, maybe 2. What are your thoughts on that with the double stack with the run back? How do we want to handle that with Orlando? We probably want to get in this case get Pearson involved in this lineup, probably since we have the salary, right?
Yeah, I would start with throwing in Pearson. And, as far as the run back goes with Dormady, this is where, because he's so cheap, I think you're actually fine throwing in Latimer and, Lance Lenoir or another Orlando player. And then seeing what you can jam in, literally the other 2 spots, right? You got 10K essentially.
Yeah, so we're basically double stack with the run back, and we're going to have this game go off. Obviously, that's a given. But I feel like Lenoir, he's got a decent floor. He's on the field a lot, and it's PPR. So look, we've got plenty of salary here. We can. Who are we missing here, stud wise, in the flex that we want to get? Let's lock them in first and see where the defense lands us. Who are we missing here? But Badette, Butler. Do you want to get Butler involved? What do we think?
Sure, throw in Badette just because he's the most expensive. We can do anything with him, then we're fine.
Yeah, and we could do anything we want here. In fact, we could come up from Lenore if we wanted to, or we can go from Latimer. We can go from Latimer to Rambo probably if we wanted to. In this case, because I can afford it, let's go Arlington. But can we come up? What's Rambo at? What's his price? Like 8,400 or something like that?
8,000, I think, flat.
So we could get. Let's try because we're rocking tournaments here. Let's try to let's hope that Rambo can take over this offense this week. This is an interesting build. We got for those of you listening on the podcast, we got Dormady, we got Turner Jr. for San Antonio, Pearson, Rambo, Lenore, Jeff Badette, Renegades. This is just showing you what's possible with a guy like Dormady. And you can pretty much do whatever the hell you want, especially if you're going any value like Lenore or anything like that. You can play whatever defense you want. You can play all the studs. And if you wanted to go down from Pearson to like Blake Jackson or VC or Willis, you won't have to punt with Lenore. You can do anything else. Let's build one more lineup together. Where do we want to go? Do we want to try to build the DiNucci tournament lineup and see what we have to sacrifice to make that look good? What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So, Scott, what do we think for Ben DiNucci stacks here in a tournament? We got you got to go 2. You know, if he's passing the ball 40 plus times against Orlando, you got to get 2 pass catchers in there, right?
Yeah, and again, I like the cheap guys.
Okay.
I like the salary savings. I think it's a roulette between Green, Willis, and VC. I like them. I mean, Blake Jackson's always going to be there, but I do think the optimal lineup's going to have one of those 3 cheap guys.
I feel like. What are your thoughts on putting Willis and VC in the same lineup because they kind of play that same role, similar? It's probably not optimal, right? We probably want to go with Green, right?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, look, we don't have to stack both the cheap guys. I think just one cheap guy you need. You could go Pearson and Willis or something like that, but
yeah.
I'm just favoring the cheaper guys this week.
Let's try Pearson.
I think the upside's there.
Yeah, I agree. Let's try Pearson and see how screwed we are. So we obviously don't want to mess with Bradwell here, in my opinion. We probably want to run one back. Who do we want to run it back with here? Do we want to go Lenore value? We probably have to do something like that and just get variations of the run back. What do you think, Scott? Lenore, or do we want to pay up for our boy at tight end?
Latimer would be the safest. Rambo would be like the GPP flyer, and I think Lenore is, I mean, the best bang for the buck in my opinion, based on his last week. D-Day likes him. I think Lenore's fine, especially because I think in this build, I would like to try to squeeze in Brian Hill at running back just because Vegas gives up 142 rushing yards a game.
Yeah, I love that. Let's get Brian Hill in here. And we're not screwed. We actually set up really well here, even with Ben DiNucci and Pearson, because we went down with value. So where do we want to target here for the flex? Who are we missing? We could probably get to what, about a 7K guy-ish? That's kind of our ceiling for price. So, you know, you got Latimer there. We probably don't want to do that, but you got guys like Rod Smith, Travell Harris. Where do we pay down a little bit, or do we end up with Arlington's defense? Scott, I want your opinion on this. Where do you think we go?
I think those options you just named, the Rod Smiths, the Travell Harrises, I think all those are good options. I don't think you necessarily need to. I don't think there's a big difference between the Brahmas and the Renegades defense. I think it's going to be a low scoring game either way. Neither one of those defenses really have the power to do what like the DC defenders or the Roughnecks do as far as like creating scores off of turnovers. But I think in that range, there's definitely a lot. I like that range a lot, to be honest with you. You don't want to put Latimer in there, but I like Rod Smith. Your boy Tolliver came back on the team.
Oh God,
he's in that range as well.
No,
Travell Harris. All
right, let's try.
I like those guys.
Let's try Rod Smith, and then you got DC Defenders defense, which is a decent lineup. I want to do one variation on this. I'm going to pull out Lenore here. I'm going to pull out Brian Hill. I want to try Abram Smith and DC Defenders defense, and see what we can work with here. So we've got 4,900 a pop for 2 spots. I'm gonna go down to our boy Justin Smith here at, what is he, 4,100 for Houston. Try to get some involvement there. Little mini stack here, running one player against the defense. A lot of people who are optimizing are not selecting that option to include players against the defense, and there's really no reason to not include at least one guy there, in my opinion. So you're getting a unique build right off the bat here, and there's no reason both these teams can't go off. So 5,700, where does that put us? Lucky Jackson, Sidney Sweeney, Bradwell. I mean, probably don't want to play Bradwell in this lineup. John Lovett, that's an interesting build. So these are tournament builds here. So I'm not hand building tournament lineups. Scott, you're not hand building tournament lineups, are you? You're going through and checking them and switching things out, but you're optimizing and you're really using your rules to control this stuff. I know Ellie does the same thing. There's no way in hell I'm hand building these type of things. A lot of times I'll save some of these lineups that we build on the show and I'll enter those in tournaments, but we don't need to be as nitpicky because I'm going to let my rules and I'm going to let all that stuff do the work for me. So what do we think here, man? Like, after we've gone through this whole show, we've looked at the entire slate, we've looked at all of the players and built some lineups here. Ellie, what's your first thoughts on how these builds are going to go? What are things we need to focus on? And are you focused in on getting a lot of the studs in and getting one throwaway like $3,700 dude? Like, what is your strategy this weekend right now?
I'm sticking with the same strategy that we've been running, and that's exactly what you're talking about there. It's stars and scrubs. The problem is as Scott kind of pointed out when he broke down, Lance Noir's fucking recent performance, right? He just hasn't been priced up for the workload, and I think we're still seeing that across several different players. So now that we have a little bit of a sample size that we can refer back to, I think we have a better understanding of that some of these, there's just dudes that are mispriced. So you can go ahead and jam in some of those studs, and some of those studs are mispriced. Like, I don't know if you got to pay up for Gordon. I don't know if you necessarily need to pay up for Abram Smith. You can pivot back down to, like, imagine getting a week where Dalvin Cook was $1,000 more than Christian McCaffrey. Like, what the fuck, bro?
Exactly.
It's similar. Like, go ahead and play the guys that are mispriced.
Scott, what are your thoughts, man? What's your mindset going into this weekend? Where are you at when it comes to your overall roster construction for these tournaments?
Mostly just playing a safe QB. I mean, we got burned last week, and there were just a lot of shakeups, and I think consistency is the key going forward. Ownership is my other thing. I'm just paying attention to prior ownership. I mean, I've never seen such a kind of, everybody tends to play, like I said, Abram Smith this week, he was barely owned last week. Even when the news came out, you could have pivoted to him and no one did it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And I think the ownership's gonna be huge. So I'm trying to avoid huge ownership plays, and I just want to be consistent at quarterback. I don't want the quarterback to fail me this week.
Yep. When it comes to these $222 lineups, or even I think there's like a $33 like 3 max, or there's some of these other like single entry type builds, I'm not going to get too crazy. I might convince myself in one of those 4 222 builds to play D-Day. Maybe. I think that's the one guy that I'm willing to risk it on, and if he gets pulled at halftime, then it is what it is. I had 50% Perez last week, and I still found a way to make it happen. Probably not, like, you probably can't make that happen every week with those massive things that those landmines, but in this case, I'm willing to risk it with D-Day. Ellie, what's your any upset this weekend that you're looking at? Do you think the Guardians can at least keep it close with Seattle? Is there a matchup that you think, just not even fantasy-wise, but that you could think there can be an upset?
Yeah, I think Houston beats DC. I don't think that any team is really all that good. These are all just a bunch of they're in week 6, man. So they're playing for like the 3rd or 4th time. I think it's possible that they can win.
What do you think, Scott? Do you think the Vipers can keep up with Battlehawks? Like, where are you landing with some of these games that are a little bit closer? What do you think?
It's going to be a tough one. I I like St. Louis a lot.
Yeah.
But I do think, like I said, if Perez stays consistent, it's fine. But St. Louis just does not give up a lot of yards in the air. So I do think their defense is, they're only giving up 181 yards a game in the air. They're giving up 133 on the ground.
Yeah.
So that's why I said I liked Vegas's running backs. I like St. Louis's running backs. But in general, I'm really targeting the Seattle-Orlando game, the St. Louis-Vegas game.
Yeah.
I want a piece of Houston defenders. I think it's a better game to watch than for fantasy, personally, and I'm avoiding the San Antonio Renegades game minus the defenses.
Yeah, love it, man. I agree with you. Ellie and I think maybe we try to pull off a showdown show for this Monday night game. I think that would be kind of fun to do. Comment down below if you guys are interested in seeing that. Besides that, join that Discord. We appreciate you guys. Hey, throw us a like on the way out. Let's get to 50 likes. I know that the viewership has been down a little bit because there's just not as many people playing. But we appreciate everybody. Hit subscribe on the way out and hit that like button. And Scott, hey, we appreciate you joining us, man. Thank you so much, man. We appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's been fun.
All right, we will see you guys next time.